Littlewood is an RPG town builder with a difference. In most RPGs, you're the plucky upstart hero who needs to save the land from an evil wizard or something. In Littlewood, that's already happened. You did it. You saved the world from an evil wizard. At least that's what your friends tell you. Turns out in saving the world, you got a good old bout of video game amnesia and can't remember anything. Also in saving the world, a lot of it got destroyed too. A- for effort, I guess. From here, along with your old friends, it's up to you to rebuild the town you find yourself in. So, get ready to clear some weeds, build some houses, attract new townsfolk, build balloons, start farming, breed flowers, attract more townsfolk, catch fish, catch rare fish, chop, mine, and most importantly, relax. There is so much to get into with Littlewood, so I think the best way to review it is to take you through my journey. From first finding it on Steam, to my final thoughts with it by the end. A quick note is if that at any point in this review you're 100% committed to buying and playing this game, maybe just skip to the conclusion. You see, a lot of what makes Littlewood great is the journey itself, both in the story and in the mechanics. Playing with a mechanic for just long enough before it gets repetitive and having the game mix things up on you with a new mechanic or new ways of doing the skill you're already working on. The progression isn't always perfect, but it's one of the things that makes Littlewood work. What first caught my attention on the Steam store was Littlewood's art style. Now sure, cute pixel style is nothing new, but Littlewood just goes to show that sometimes things are popular for a reason. Especially when it's done as well as this. Littlewood just exudes a simple charm that really captures me. I'm not even nostalgic for the era of games this is calling back to, and I still love it. The sprite work is great, from the characters to each environment having its own unique charm. The bright colours of the endless forest, the vibrant Delucia, if I'm saying that right, are the great but somehow still colourful endless mines. Plus the town itself has different art assets for each season, which look great, along with the different backing track too. The sound is the first thing you'll notice when you boot up the game and hear it in the menu. The soundtrack fits really well with the rest of the game's feel of being nice and relaxing. There's a limited number of tracks in the game, but most places have their own theme. Some even have multiple ones depending on the season. With how often the score switches itself up, it never becomes repetitive or annoying. The perfect background score. The sound effects are all fairly simple too and fit into that sort of SNES mould. Nothing much to really add, but the sound design achieves that retro relaxing vibe it's going for. So, let's make our character. Luckily you won't be stuck here for hours like most RPGs. There's only a few options and most can be changed later. I don't know what personality changes though, so don't worry about it. Pick a name and we're off. First, we learn the game's very simple controls. Move, run, which I forgot about for a while and it makes things so much better, and how to open your menus. Simples. We are then introduced to our first townsfolk. Willow lets you know the setting for the game. Due to the previously mentioned knock on the head from saving the world, you get all the exposition here. You've just woken up from your final boss fight, the world is rebuilding, and you decide to do your bit and rebuild this town, which you get to name. Dalton, your other adventuring buddy, is here too. Townsfolk are one of the main drivers for this game. Each day you can talk to them, sometimes you'll get new quests, blueprints or hints. Sometimes you just get canned lines, but there's a lot. You won't notice repeats until like the very end of the game. It's actually quite impressive. Once a day, you can compliment one townsfolk, which can progress into flirting, dates and well, you can guess. Willow and Dalton will then give you blueprints to their homes. Each townsfolk has a house you need to build for them to move into your town properly. Luckily, the resources for these ones are in some chests right next to where you start. Building is fairly simple. Select a blueprint you have enough materials for, and find a space big enough to place it. You can move around pretty much anything in Littlewood, so there aren't many restrictions on where you can place things. You can even elevate ground up to 2 levels high, or down to water. The first time I played, I tried to build around the landscape as it was, for a more rustic feel. However, I found that having multiple elevations is more trouble than it's worth, since stairways can only be built on south-facing cliffs. When playing again, I flattened pretty much everything and it was so much easier to move around. I've seen a lot of people make some fascinating town layouts, but even a lot of those are fairly flat. Still, there's a lot to play with the design tools, even if they can be a bit fiddly to use. What I found odd is how little the mouse is needed for a game that, as far as I know, was PC first. While you can navigate the menus using the mouse, you have to use the keyboard for moving objects around. It's weird. Once all the houses are built, it's time to sleep. Each day you'll get a small report of what you've done. For now, it'll just tell you about your friendship levels. These levels are increased by talking to people or hanging out with them during the day. They unlock a few cutscenes later, but don't stress about them too much like I did. Okay, day 2. First, we have a new townsfolk, Dudley. Littlewood has a steady supply of townsfolk. Some are super easy to get and pretty much just show up, like Dudley here, and some are a bit more complicated. Each one is unique with their own personality and niche they fill in the town. With Dudley, once you build his house, he'll give you the fishing rod. Fishing is mercifully easy. Just drop your bobber next to a fish and click at the right time. Simple enough, for now. Talking to Willow and Dalton will unlock the marketplace, the general store, and the concept of money, which in this game is called dewdrops. So, first the marketplace. Willow will tell you to collect weeds around the town, which can be sold at the market to someone, I don't know, we don't ask. Items placed in the market will be sold for a fixed price every day. No supply and demand here. Mercantile is technically a skill, but it only lets you sell more items at a time, and it basically levels up by itself. Dalton's general store will usually stock items and blueprints you can and will need to buy, but for now, Dalton gives you a pickaxe, an axe, and some gathering gloves. Now you can mine rocks and chop trees in town. You'll be able to pick fruit from trees in a day or two as well with the gloves. You'll have enough resources for a short while, but you may as well start collecting some around town. You won't be able to collect everything in a day though, as most actions in Littlewood use energy. You have a limited amount of energy each day, which you only get from sleeping or passing out. While you can upgrade your energy, I generally found that I didn't have enough until about the end game. Some days can be spent just chopping trees and going to bed. Another day, another townsfolk. Bubsy is essentially a celebrity chef, and if you build him a house, he will let you make a tavern where you can start cooking. Cooking is actually quite a useful skill, as it's the secondary way to make money. To cook, you need to find ingredients, primarily from fishing and farming. There's a few more complicated recipes, but don't worry about those right now. You can experiment by putting ingredients into the cooking box and trying your luck, or each day you get a silhouette of 2 ingredients that will work. I tried to work out some recipes on my own, but as the game goes on, you'll have hundreds of potential ingredients, so I just use a hint each day to complete my cookbook. Conveniently, you'll get access to the farming skills about now as well. Your town will already have a few fruit trees in them, which you can pick fruit from. You can then use that fruit to plant more of the same kind of tree, and you'll find different types of fruit as the game goes on. As for farming crops, Dudley will give you some carrots to get started. Farming is simple-ish. All you need to do is build some tilled soil and place some crops on them. Then, much like the fruit trees, in a few days you can harvest them. However, you only have a limited amount of tilled soil to start with. And it's an item, not something you can make, which is kind of strange. It turns up in the general store now and again, so keep an eye out for it, because it can run out fast. Gathering and farming might be the skills which rely on levels the most. Each fruit you pick or crop you plant requires a level in the appropriate skill. So, there's an obvious progression, and it's fairly frequent too at every 5 levels. So while not every level may matter, at least there's always something to shoot for. Other skills are not really like this. In fact, most levels don't matter as far as I can tell. There may be some hidden modifier where your level determines the frequency of rare drops, but none that I know of. Most skills have bonuses every 20 levels or a bonus chest at 50, which might have a tool or a decorative blueprint. But for the most part, leveling feels like a rare example of something underdeveloped in Littlewood. I'm very rarely excited to level up apart from the aforementioned milestones, and almost wonder if less levels that took longer each but had more rewards would have been better. Sure, not every level has to have a game-changing reward, but it would be nice to look forward to level ups. Okay, so back to town. We've got one more new building to build, the town office. We also get to give ourselves a title. I do like these little touches of customization. The town office allows us to buy upgrades for the town, and crucially, is where you'll be able to upgrade your daily energy. You usually want to buy all of these upgrades when available, and they refresh twice a week. Without knowing it, between this and the general store, you're starting to get a packed weekly schedule, and it's only going to get busier. You'll also unlock bug catching today, to catch all those firefly, pixie things you've been seeing around town. It functions much the same as fishing. With another day done, and a lot more unlocked, it's time for bed. The next day, you'll be given access to one of the most important buildings in the game. You see, originally I was worried about resources. Sure, trees could grow back, but stone seemed quite limited. Well, this is where the balloon port comes in. The game starts in Littlewood, but with the balloon port, you'll see there's a lot more for this world to offer. To begin with, you'll be offered 2 locations, both of which are ways to gather resources. The endless caverns for mining, and the endless forest for woodcutting. There's even some basic enemies to avoid. It's also worth noting for later that both these locations have unique rare drops for various skills. You can visit these areas once per day, and at higher levels you get multiple visits. Each visit generates a random mini dungeon with various resources. You can also rarely find wandering merchants in the Endless Forest. You'll need these to complete the game. For now though, you'll meet another townsfolk. Lilith is an aspiring mage who can't control her magic and is a big fan of the hero of Solemn. After being rejected from the lightning mages of the Endless Forest and giving some backstory to the world, you'll be given the blueprint to her house, and you know how this goes. But wait, what are these purple logs? Well, you see, resources aren't as simple as wood and stone. Each resource actually has 5 levels of rarity, and demand for these can pile up a lot later on. This means on each trip to the Endless Dungeons, you'll need to balance for collecting different tiers of resources, the highest of which won't really appear until the endgame, and even then, you might not get one tree on all 3 of your visits, which can make things pretty grindy. For now, Lilith's house just needs tier 2 wood. Up until now, however, you had enough planks and bricks to build things on your own. But now, you need to turn raw resources you've been collecting into processed ones. This is where crafting comes in. This is barely a skill. You get XP for using the sawmill or the smithy, but honestly, I forgot this skill existed until I was writing my notes. Some days you literally get up and use the sawmill all day, that's it. It's probably the dullest skill in the game, but being Mary isn't all kissing babies and tasting cakes. You gotta do the work. Popping back to the balloon port for a bit, you may have noticed there are more locations than just the Endless Dungeons. To get them, you'll need to upgrade the balloon port. This is done by once a day paying resources into the building. This is also done for many buildings. But let's just use the balloon port as an example. The dewdrops are easy, no problem. Then, you'll need tier 1, 2, and eventually tier 3 resources to upgrade. 3 upgrades equals a level, and most levels just give you rare items, which is kind of a booby prize honestly. But each building has 10 levels, no ifs, no buts. For me, this is where the biggest grind was. For each building, you will need 3,600 dewdrops, 12 wooden planks, 12 stone bricks, 12 fancy planks, 12 fancy bricks, 12 perfect planks, and 12 perfect bricks over the course of 27 days for each of the 13 buildings. This can be quite the grind. I remember a lot of my time towards the end of the game was just grinding resources to try and upgrade everything. In some ways, it always gives you something to be working towards. But even if you only focus on one building at a time, that is a lot of resources. But one day, you'll wake up, wonder what to work on today, and they're all done. And it's a nice feeling, because it means you've got your game back. At least with the balloon port, each location you upgrade is pretty impactful to the game. I won't go over each and every location, but Port City DeLuca is packed with things to do. And upgrade! The main thing here is the weekend vendors. The item vendor can be a useful way to get new crops, fruits, or rare items, but the furniture vendor is king. Each weekend, this guy gets new blueprints and you need them. I'll get into why shortly, but missing a blueprint from this guy and for it not to show up again for months can be brutal. DeLuca is also home to the last skill. More of a minigame, Tarot Monster is Littlewood's card game. Once unlocked, you'll find cards all over the world, and you can play rotating players for fame and glory. Eventually, you can even play your townsfolk too. You may need to alter your deck to your opponent in a kind of rock paper scissors fashion, but it's a fun little addition. Back in town, if you've sold enough weeds, you may notice an extra NPC at your marketplace. So this is the guy. If you sell certain items, merchants will visit your town. These requirements are actually listed in the journal, though as far as I know the game doesn't tell you that. The merchants come bearing gifts of blueprints, dewdrops, and on the third visit, they'll give you books. If it wasn't for the books, I actually wouldn't mention these guys, but the books are basically the end game. You need to get each merchant to visit you 3 times to unlock the ending, and some of these can be pretty difficult. Let's go over one more day before we start to tie all these systems together. Today, Dalton will give you a new blueprint, this time to be built inside people's homes, the desk. The desk lets your townsfolk tell you how they want their houses decorated and where they want them located. Making sure to get everyone's house in the right location with the right items actually reminds me a bit of Dark Cloud if anyone out there remembers that. Townsfolk often want specific wallpaper, flooring, and a number of furniture items. Other than 1 or 2 generic items such as the bookcase, most of these will be unique too. No one wants to see them last season. This is why the furniture vendor is your new best friend, and worst enemy. You see, you have to complete a page request to unlock both the next page and the townsfolk special rewards, which can be game changing. For example, one item you can unlock lets you jump up cliffs or over small objects, which really helped me so much in my first town. But what if you miss the wallpaper? Well, then you're stuck. Wait until next week and roll the dice again, and again, and again. This brings up the biggest flaw for me in Littlewood: randomness and rare hunting. Littlewood has so much battling against the odds. Blueprints are probably the most obvious example, especially when they stop you from advancing. But rare drops are another huge factor. Many items need rare materials, and knowing where to get them can be really difficult. Later, you'll unlock a museum for collecting items, which is fun enough, but it will also give you hints as to where to find those items. Honestly though, I eventually had to resort to the wiki. I came into Littlewood determined not to use the wiki, but the late game rare item hunting broke me. Some items only appear in certain areas at certain times of year. Miss them and you'll have to wait. One of the merchants needs rare fish that only spawn in the spring. If you don't fish like hell in the early game, you can miss them, and that's too bad. Try again next year. As the game goes on, there are systems that make this better. For example, at level 20, you can go on fishing trips. This lets you get a shot at rare fish out of season, but it's still a dice roll as to which fish you'll get each day. This helps with, say, the museum, but if you need multiples of something specific, it's a dice roll each time. This issue is mostly only present at the end game, so you'll have seen most that the game has to offer by that point. I wouldn't let it put you off, but it is something you'll have to deal with if you want to finish the game. The last thing to really talk about is the seasons and the calendar. On the same day as the Death's Blueprint, you'll be given the town square. This is used for two things. First is, remember those friendship levels you get each day? Well, if you get specific people to a high enough level, you'll get small cutscenes that give you some backstory and character development. It was always nice to wake up to one of these, a nice little addition. The other is for town festivals. The day of the month actually matters. You even have a calendar to help you keep up with things. It's a nice break up to the weeks when a mysterious eldritch merchant sells his wares, or you have to find runaway chickens. Seasons change at the end of every month, and credit to the dev, the town changes its look and sound for each one. It's a nice mix-up, and you'll also find different bugs and fish, which is nice before you get into the rare hunting. There is even more to cover, flower breeding, but it's already a lot and should give you an idea of what this game is about. Littlewood really captured my attention early on and gave me a lot to do. At times, it may have felt like a second job, and the end does need a lot of rare hunting, but I really enjoyed my time with it. I really enjoyed the atmosphere and learning about both my townsfolk and the wider world. The story honestly surprised me, as I wasn't expecting much more than an excuse for this game to happen, but there's some world building here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the start of the Solemn expanded universe and we see more games in this setting. The groundwork is there. Littlewood has a good sense of progression. While it can be overwhelming at times, I very often had clear, achievable goals to work towards and felt pretty good about completing them. Littlewood may not be mechanically deep as some other life sims out there, but for me that was actually a plus. Littlewood always felt like it was something that I could comprehend and complete. You could maybe consider it a light option in the genre, but that's not to say it's short. I still put around 25 hours into the game, and have seen people put in well over 100. I don't think I designed the town of my dreams. Part of that is my own brutalist design philosophy, but part is the limitations of the interface for making big, sweeping changes. I still put time into where things went, and got something out of it. And, if you're so inclined, there are some amazing towns to be built. Littlewood is an easy recommendation for me. It may have its flaws, but I had a great time with it. I played on PC, and something I kept thinking was that this would be perfect to play it like a day at a time, on the bus, or just here and there. And since then, it's been released on the Switch. If you have the choice of platform, I think that's what I would choose. Littlewood is the sort of game you can relax after a day at work, or make your job entirely. There's something here for everyone. Always something to boot up and aspire to. Plus, if you're really creative, there's a lot of canvas here for you to play with. I may not be able to make my village a masterpiece, but it really felt like my village. And I'll miss my townsfolk at the end of the day. Littlewood is available now on Steam or Switch for about $15 or £11. I hope you enjoyed this review. I had a fun time making it. If you're new here and would like to see more stuff like this, then feel free and encouraged to do all the YouTube social media interaction things that the algorithm loves. Next review should be out a little bit sooner than this one. Similar sort of stuff. Until next time.